All right. Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti, and this is episode 150. My guest tonight is Chris FISK. We're talking about fantasy escapism and lore building. He's got Infinite Tale Chronicles. If you guys don't know, now you know. The link to the website is in the description of the show. Before I bring on Chris, I want to let you guys know two things. Tomorrow, the 12th of January. How is it the 12th of January already? I digress. This code, Alterna18, all caps, no spaces. Save 18% at alternacomics.com off your total order. That code, tomorrow, the last day, the 12th. It is the last day to use that code. That celebrates 18 years of Alterna. And the second thing, we've got a new moon special. We're repeating the new and full moon specials on the King Cryptid campaign. So they're like second chance offerings for you guys. The Behemoth prismatic sticker. Looks like one of those that you would get out of like a vending machine. A lot of people have the King Cryptid one. If you missed out on getting the Behemoth one, this is Christian Rossi art. Go pick it up. It is on kingcryptid.com and it is also on alternacomics.com. Free shipping worldwide. This is trading card size, this sticker, in case you're wondering. That's going to be up until the 14th. So again, sale and also Behemoth sticker. All right, so before we bring on Chris, let's say hello to those of you in the chat. We got Bobo here. Says, I'm being hunted by Nephilim. I'm sorry to hear that, Bobo. You have my condolences. Spicer McLeroy says, what's going on? Hope you're all doing well. Good evening, GovNet Pete. Hope the King Cryptid campaigns are doing well. How many left before they're sold out? I want to see a second printing soon. It's funny that you say that. I printed a whole bunch of number one. Actually, I printed a whole bunch of all of them. But I should have printed more of 2, 3, and 4. I think I only have like 200 left of 2, 3, and 4, like each. I've got maybe 400 to 500 left of number 1. So I thought I'd have a little more left than that at this point. Thank you guys, though. It's a good problem to have. But maybe we would see a second printing eventually. If we did, it'd probably be like 2026, something like that. That's my guess, based off of the way things would go with other campaigns, although it might be 2025. I don't know. Anyway, that's about how many. Seer of all that is obvious. How's it going? Thank you for being here tonight. Ben is in the chat too. How's it going, Ben? Chris is also in the chat. Hey, Chris, look at that. Ronan is here. That's Michael Smith. What's up, Michael? Hope you're doing well. We got Jaded One in the house as well. What's up, Jaded? The Beam Pad is here too. How's it going, Beam Pad? Hex Allen is here. What's up, Hex? Glad to see you in the chat. Cole King is here as well. What's up, Cole? Great to see you as well, my friend. Edwin, what's up, Edwin Acevedo? How's it going? Bloodbone, second chance campaign on Fund My Comic. Look at that. We also have Zaid Studios here, who's very excited to see Chris. Says that Infinite Tale is awesome. Look at that. Shrek, how's it going, Shrek? Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here tonight. Spicer says, congrats on the 18-year anniversary. Thank you. I appreciate that, Spicer. Took 18 years to get here. Jaded One, beautiful card. Yeah, it's a fun-looking card. It's a sticker card. You can peel it if you want. You can leave it alone if you want. Once it's yours, you can do whatever you want to do with it. We also have Cole King saying, get all the full moon and new moon specials by backing the king size tier. You could do that. That's very true. You get a lot. You get everything new on the campaign except for original art commissions. Although you do get one of those 3-minute sketch cards that I'm going to be doing for everybody that got that. It was, I think, a couple weeks ago. It was a full moon special, and you could also get the super moon bundle as well, which gets you all the full and new moon specials. Grape Nuka Cola, how's it going? Thank you for being here tonight. And also, Paul says, "Oh man, there's RPG books in the link." I have questions, but I remember how Pete's eyes glazed over when we went down that rabbit hole when Irene was on the show. My eyes didn't glaze over due to the RPG. My eyes glazed over due to the convoluted explanations in which Irene was going 100 miles an hour and I couldn't even understand and catch up. I'm all for the RPG stuff, and she's very excited about it, and I respect that. But it's very hard to follow along. All right, so without further ado, let's bring him on, the man of the hour. That would be one Mr. Chris FISK. What's up, Chris?
What up, man? Thanks for having me. And congrats on 18 years. Holy crap, dude.
Oh, no, no problem. And thank you. Appreciate it. Got here one day at a time.
It can vote now.
It's great. Illusion of choice for everyone. So how are you, Chris?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, I was working on book 2 and all of its permutations.
I'm sorry, your mic cut out for a second. What was the last part you just said?
I said that I'm working on book 2 and all of its permutations. Yeah, fun stuff.
Oh, man. We did an audio check, guys, before the show. I don't know what's going on with them. Oh, it looks like you're coming back now.
Huh?
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. All right.
Very good. Yeah, for some reason the mic was cutting out. You were sounding really low and far away. Yeah, even Cole was commenting, can barely hear you. But I think you're sounding good now. Everybody, you agree? You guys can hear Chris?
Hopefully.
I can hear you. Now you're sounding good, loud and clear.
Awesome.
All right. So, are you going to join us tonight on camera, or are we going to be staring at this wonderful art?
Unfortunately, my camera is kind of MIA at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. The one of the curses of having a cat that seems to think things can get knocked over tables, and it's totally cool.
Well, yeah, that happens. So, Infinitale Chronicles. What's up with that? What have you been doing with it? How long has it been going on for? And what was the inspiration?
Sure. So Infinitale Chronicles is a graphic novel series based off of the actual game sessions of a tabletop role-playing game that I had developed back in the 90s. I started Infinitale as a kind of I can do that too kind of bug as a teenager. I got hooked on Dungeons and Dragons at the local library. It's kind of weird, but I kind of owe Dungeons and Dragons for like my literacy, mainly because, I'm severely dyslexic, barely functionally literate as a 12-year-old. And one of my friends invites me to the library to this thing called the Fantasy Club. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to get beaten up going here. But I ended up going there, and there was this awesome librarian who totally hooked me up with some books and stuff and said, you can draw. Maybe we could put you to work, do some art and stuff around the library. And it turned into something that became incredibly beneficial when I got into high school. I'm not sure how it is across the entire state, but in Pelham, New Hampshire, they treated all of their high schoolers like prison inmates, where you had to have community service hours in order to graduate. And that's fun and dandy until you have a job and you're like, what, am I supposed to work pro bono or something? Like, what's going on here? But the librarian got news of that and said, hey, I know you got the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing and you're kind of like making your own game, but maybe you could I'll give you community service hours if you babysit the kids here, basically use them as guinea pigs to test out, beta test your game. And I loved it because there is nothing more crushingly brutal on it, like the brutal honesty of kids, like teenagers that aren't your friends, that have no like motivation to be nice or pull the punches when they're testing your product is, you know, super invaluable. And yeah, they tore me to shreds as a teenager. Like I became a jaded 30 something in an 18-year-old's body, you know, going through the rigors of beta testing. But yeah, I built the role playing game system out of it, and it went on for almost a decade. Like it started in 1990, and then ended in 98, and then there was like another crop up about a couple years later or whatever in like 2000. But what happened was life got in the way. So after I graduated high school and I didn't need those community service hours anymore, I got a full-time job, went off to university, Plymouth State, baby. And I ended up getting a job in video game development, and I flew around the world, and I no longer had time for that passion project that I just kick around occasionally. And eventually, after about 10 years of working in video game development, I left and got into a more secure career, had that change of life career thing in my late 30s. And I found myself creatively constipated. I was like, well, I have the stable job now, but like I'm not making video games anymore. So I need to like do something artistic, or, you know, maybe I could, you know, that old game that I had in the shipping containers that I shipped all around the world for no reason. Maybe I could, you know, make a game out of this or whatever. And I talked to a engineer friend who was working over at Blizzard, and somehow the conversation got into World of Warcraft and like, how did that game get so successful? And it was like, because they had an entire install base of fans before World of Warcraft even launched, like because there were the games and the novels and all this stuff that came out before World of Warcraft. And it was like you already had like a bunch of players champing at the gate or at the bit to get in there and explore the world for themselves that they've been reading about. And I was like, well, maybe I should do that with my my tabletop role playing game. Like rather than just make the game and be like, yeah, here it is, yeah, have fun. I thought, well, what if I introduce them to the world of the role playing game first, and then once the historical primer, i.e., all those chronicled game sessions were played out in graphic novel form, I could then say, you know what? Here's the sandbox. Here's the world. This is the game system that made these stories. Have fun. Make your own.
So, wow, man. So yeah, that's a very, very storied history that you have with your with your IP.
Yeah. Well.
Where did it start for you? Where did all this, in terms of being interested in fantasy and role-playing games and whatnot, where'd that start?
Well, like I said, I mean, I was barely literate. I mean, I had no ambition to do anything when I was younger, but I had a nerdy friend who dragged me to the library and said, hey, let's do some
so it was 100% with that. It wasn't like you had any inkling of any of that stuff beforehand? Wow.
Yeah. And it was kind of weird because once you see what a tabletop role-playing game is, it kind of opens your eyes to like, oh, that's what this is. Oh, that's where they got this. And like, I remember, so my parents were weird. All the kids got NESs when we were younger. I got the Sega Master System. And everybody got to play Super Mario Brothers. I got to play Shinobi and Phantasy Star. And Phantasy Star was
no complaints there.
Yeah, dude, like that was like, hey, dude, this is like the game we're playing at the library, but it's got cool graphics. And it was like, that was where I was like, I could do that, you know, the Hitchcock camera moment where it was like, yeah. And yeah, the rest is me basically being a huge masochist trying to make a role-playing game.
So what's been the most difficult part for you when it comes to this? Because there's so many different parts to it.
Oh God, yeah. I think the part that hits me the hardest is the intimidation of everything all at once. When you look at a big project, you really have to put the blinders on and focus on one bit at a time. And if you don't, you become either just intimidated and you just give up, or you essentially lose sight and everything just becomes a mess. So staying organized and putting those focus blinders on was probably the biggest challenge. Again, like my dad would start a million projects and never finish any of them, and I vowed I would never be like that. So it's been a constant fight against kind of my own genetics.
Man, I think that's a fight that a lot of creative people can understand. It's like a daily battle.
Yeah. Oh, let's start this.
Prioritizing the hierarchy of the things you want to do and the projects you've got, and then in the middle of a project, you'll have an idea to do another project, And yeah, that's always good. That's always fun.
Oh, yeah.
So when it came to developing this specific Infinitale Chronicles, when it came to developing that, coming up with the characters and things like that, how'd you go about that?
Oh, I think I kind of cheated. So the characters that you're seeing in, or the heroes in Infinitale Chronicles, or at least in this first series, The War of the Trees, these are all players. These are all player characters. I'm taking, I basically, I guess, punched up the script of several recorded gaming sessions. And the main heroine that you see here, Aisling, she was played by one of my friends, and all of her decisions and all of her acting and all that stuff was totally her. I mean, clearly, I had to tweak a few things here and there, but more or less, it was a collaborative story environment where prior to the age of Google, I had kind of full run of the Pelham Public Library and just tore through the entire mythology section, their encyclopedias. Because one thing about being like a dungeon master or a game master in a tabletop role-playing game is the world is only as big as you are. And if you don't have the answers for things, your world gets real limiting real quick. And I was a dumb kid, so I was like, okay, I got to smarten up real quick. So I read up on a lot of stuff, and it led me to a lot of folklore that I would say is kind of obscure, but not so much today with Google and everything. Like a lot of inspirations for the stories here were everything from the Mabinogion there from Welsh mythology to the Kalevala, which is the Finnish mythology, to Snorri Sturluson's Volsung saga, the Icelandic sagas. So it had a lot of European mythology influences. And I honestly, as much as I liked Tolkien, the whole Lord of the Rings stuff, I didn't want to be like a derivative of a derivative of a derivative, the way that we see a lot of modern fantasy. It's like Warcraft feels like the Las Vegas experience of fantasy.
That's an interesting way to put it. I've never heard it. I've never heard it referred to that. That's interesting. Shrek's got a good question here. Says, is there a danger of your world getting too big?
Yes. So one thing that I learned early on, and again, this is from the honesty of horrible, evil children, was that when you're doing world building and you're building lore, it should all be in service of your story. Nobody cares if you have a bazillion alien languages and lost civilizations that have absolutely nothing to do with your story. And they're just, oh yeah, they're over here in the, because people don't want to do homework. That's not I think that's why a lot of those Marvel movies are now starting to really die out, not because of the ideological stuff as well, but yeah,
it's homework.
Yeah, it's like you pop into the theater and you're like, oh, you didn't watch that 3 seasons of X series? You don't know about? I'm like, no, I just
you didn't spend 20 hours watching that other stuff and have notes about it and then remember every single thing that happened about it. No, I have 1,000 other things going on in my life. I just come here to escape.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, escapism. Yeah.
Not to get tied down with more stuff to remember. That's the funny part, because they did it so well, and storytellers do it well and have done it well for the longest time. Mm-hmm. You go in there and you don't feel lost. You jump right in and you get acclimated quickly to the situation and the characters before you, and events unfold and things like that. And even if you discover two characters or more that have a past by the way they interact, it adds to it, and you understand right away, oh, they like each other, oh, they don't like each other, that kind of a thing right off the bat. You don't have to have been absorbed into whatever and know every single in and out. But you're right about the whole aspect of world building. There's a lot of people that focus on some really cool stuff. I've talked to a lot of creators over the years that have spent hundreds of hours building up their world, and dozens of those hours building up parts of it that they just will never get to. That it doesn't matter to the story even. And it's not even like they'll get to it eventually. Like they'll just never get to it. It's like this thing over here and this race of people here, and they do this and they do that, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, how does that play into the story? And it's like, well, it doesn't. It's just they're over there doing their thing.
Yeah, you just kind of waving through the bus window at them.
It's like, so they basically don't exist. They only exist here. And you spent so much time, you have to make sure the world you're crafting exists for the audience, not just for yourself.
Yeah, well, it's also when you're designing like a tabletop role-playing game too, you are constantly falling in that pitfall of, building extraneous information or building extraneous lore that may or may not ever be used. Like, so there is a dichotomy that you're kind of faced with, where first and foremost you have a story, you have a responsibility for making a coherent story and a very consistently logic universe. But when you're over in the tabletop world, you're kind of creating a sandbox almost, or a theme park. Sometimes those rides just won't get ridden. Nobody cares about the Turkish twist anymore. It broke down. Canopy Lake got rid of it. Like all that stuff's gone. But you still have to have it there, because on the off chance that one kid would be like, I want to throw up and watch it, centripetally fly upwards, or so.
But Canopy Lake Park is in New Hampshire, folks. Chris is also in New Hampshire.
Oh yeah.
For those that are maybe like, what is he talking about? Spicer has a good question as well. So, what's the best advice on writing a 10-issue arc? What was your biggest challenge?
I honestly didn't go in planning it to be a 10-issue arc. I chopped it up. I initially had the story, or had the game sessions, and played them out to conclusion, and then started taking the Ginsu knife to it and just chop until I finally distilled it down into 10 books. I could have easily made this 100 books if I wanted to, but I had to distill down what I found to be the most coherent and concise story, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in writing that ends up on the cutting room floor. There's a lot of things, like, you should always write more than you plan on showing your audience, because there's that understanding of it's easier to subtract than it is to add, because you're basically throwing literary spackle on something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that old adage that you rewrite. You don't really write, you rewrite.
Yep.
So there's a lot of it with the editing.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier, like you said, with the subtractive element of writing. But there's a big difference between building up stuff, having ideas in there, and then sometimes not using them because they just don't benefit the story. Than the previous example that I gave, where I've talked to people over the years that have spent a lot of time building up things that don't even impact the story. They're just there. They're just there, and no one's ever really going to know about them. And that's the part that's unfortunate, because if you really can focus, and it's kind of what we were talking about before, we're focusing on the various tasks you have to do, and if you can really focus on what is important to your story and your characters, you'll get to where you want to go a lot faster. And I think the pacing of your story for your audience too, it won't feel as meandering.
Oh God, yeah. I think that's a very the pacing is probably the hardest moving target to hit, to snipe, because what you have in your head, the movie you have in your head, is running through a million different translations. You're basically translating 1,000 languages in Google Translate, and the story that you're putting out on paper is very different from what's actually in your head. And I found that a lot of proofreading, a lot of people that hate you or people who are not your friends or family, get them to read your book and trash it. And then you can take like qualitative analysis and be like, you know what? Out of the 100 people that read this, 99 of them said that this part was garbage. So you pull that piece out. Like,
How do you do that? You just like you message someone and go, "Do you like me, or do you hate me?"
well, it's easy when they.
Because if you hate me, have I got a treat for you?
Yeah, Rammstein calls. No. So I am fortunate that I've made a lot of frenemies in various industries that I've worked in, and I have friends that are brutally honest to the point where I don't know if they're like joking. So I respect when I get kudos from them because they're very few and far between. And I've had, God, with my first with Infinitil book 1 there, yeah, dude, like I sent it out to this one proofreader and he comes back, and I can't really say on air some of his feedback because there was a lot of expletives and slurs in there, but basically the feedback that I got was, you know, brutally honest and very useful, because it turned out that, you know, the 10 other people that were reading the advanced copies were saying similar things. And I found that, like, in my day job, I'm a UX designer. So, you know, part of my job is to basically listen to people complain and translate what their complaints are. In addition to that, it's to advocate for the dumbest guy in the room. And so, unfortunately, that's me a lot of the times. But when you're getting feedback, sometimes what they're saying isn't what they're saying, and all feedback is good. You know, there's that famous quote, I think it was Henry Ford said something like, if I listened to my customers, they'd be wanting a faster horse instead of a car. Or you know, I probably butchered that quote, but part of that is a skill in taking criticism and taking feedback, and realizing that you have to separate yourself from your work. So when somebody's ripping into your work, they're not saying you are, as a person, are invalid and you need to go, you know, your ego needs to get checked out the door. Because, you know, the moment you ask somebody for money, you're on the hook to deliver. And having honest feedback, people that are tearing into your product before that you know, before that phase of you asking for money, is a huge confidence booster, in my opinion. Because once you get past that barrier of the feedback and you go through your revisions and all your different permutations and drafts or whatever, you get to a point where the negativity isn't gnawing at your you know, that imposter syndrome that all creatives have. And you're at that point where you're like, okay, people like this enough to actually pay for it. I think it's ready. And
oh yeah,
and the customers will tell you that.
yeah. I mean, I've got people that I trust in my life that I know are going to give me an honest answer, and I value their opinion. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got an opinion, but you got to know who to trust in terms of, are they giving you an honest opinion? Are they giving you something that they think this would benefit the story? This is where it was good. This is where it was bad. This is where it was confusing. You know, oh, I really like that character. Do we see more of that one? And eventually you'll hear a lot of the same things repeated by the people who end up becoming the audience. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's so vital. There's so many things that I think come out where people they're very precious about it. They don't want to talk about their story. They don't want to share it with anyone. It's one thing to not want to do that publicly, even though I encourage many people. That's a big part of it. You have to talk about what your stuff is. Mm-hmm. In order to get people even aware of it on a surface level. But it's like you're getting a free education, because that's the only way that we're going to learn, is when people come along and do that. And I was just having this conversation earlier today, actually, with my wife, and I was talking about a lot of the people over the years who've had tremendous axes to grind for me about rejections and submissions. Oof. Or otherwise. Mm-hmm. Even sometimes a creator that I would sign on, and then I would have to give them like tough love with the situation, and they would be like, "Why are you picking on me?" I'm like, "I'm picking on you because I care about you, because you've got potential.
Yeah.
Because you're slacking in this area and that area, and you're not seeing it, obviously, because you're doing it, or I should say, not doing it. So my whole purpose, especially if I sign you on, would be to recognize that and to help you out.
Mhm.
So if you view that as me picking on you,
Yeah.
like there's something like you have to readjust your attitude
Mhm.
because I'm here to try to make you as good as you could possibly be and to let you see what I see in you. But it's easier said than done. There's a lot of people that they get their feelings hurt in the immediate, but they don't realize that the bigger hurt of someone not saying those things, of someone
Oh,
not
yeah.
pulling you out of the way of that bus that's going to nail you. That is when they would go later on when it happens. I wish I had someone that could have just yanked me away and said, "Hey, watch out. You're going to get hit." But that's a thing in this industry, especially when you're creative and you've got the ego and you've got you're so invested personally into what you're creating, which is great. But then you can never separate yourself from understanding that, okay, it's personal to you, of course, and that's wonderful. But then at the same time, once it gets out there, you have to understand it's no longer 100% yours. It's going to be open to interpretation by other people. They're going to experience it too. So you have to leave yourself a little bit of a distance between that. But yeah, that's tremendous in terms of getting some great feedback. I'm glad you've got people like that for you and that you're open to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man. Just to echo what you're saying, like I appreciate like the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference, And I would rather have somebody say, I care enough about your product that I'm going to give you negative feedback than somebody that says or doesn't say anything at all. They're like, dude, don't talk to him. That book sucks. Like I mean, we've heard it, we've seen it, there's like the that's nice. I'll put it on the refrigerator right there, and it's like, oh, that's not going to sell, is it? Nobody's going to buy that.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if people, if it's a fear of rejection. I don't know if it's something that everyone's got their issues and their hangups. And in this space, of course, you get a lot of people who are introverted and grow up in a certain way where this is their world. This is everything to them. And when they put themselves out there and leave themselves vulnerable and someone kind of picks it apart, they take it really hard. And I sympathize with that. But at the same time, again, it's not going to do you any favors to not have honesty come your way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man. Well, that and there's a big difference between making a world for you and making a world for customers that are giving you their money.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like one thing that I learned in video game development was all feedback is valuable, even the most incendiary feedback. I worked at this one company and we were doing focus testing, and we're walking around our players with clipboards and we're taking notes. And the play testers didn't realize that it was the designers and the people that actually worked on these game scenarios. They just thought we were just, poll takers or whatever, or, part of the survey staff. So we're walking around and I just remember hearing this one guy slam down the mouse. Like he was just playing, just bam. And he goes, whoever designed this should be publicly beaten. This is the most just total rate. How gamers get. The freaking guy's going full chimp, like the German kid, was ist das, But I look over at the guy across the room who designed it. And remember that old commercial where the Native American looks at the camera and the little
the one tear. Yeah.
That's basically what it was. And I'm like, I don't know what to say, buddy. We're all keeping quiet, but it's yeah, I think a little piece of him died that day.
Oh, man. That's probably because we grew up with things like Garfield, and Garfield is whoever did that should be dragged down to the street and shot. You ever watch the old Garfield? And they're not gonna put that tone in the new Garfield. That's for sure.
No more Lorenzo music.
Which is that's not Garfield. But anyway, I digress. It's that kind of thing. That dissenting voice. That at the core of it is love.
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. To want that to go away and disappear, which the conversation out there among a lot of creators, due to the fact that in social media everybody can express their opinion on that level, But the fact that there's a weird thing out there that's occurring where that kind of thing is being constantly discouraged. That even though it comes from a place of love and passion and concern, you care about it, which is why you're saying something to begin with. Because if you don't care, that's it. You know, you're apathetic. What do you care? It could be the worst thing in the world. It doesn't matter to me. But when you care about it, you're going to express your disappointment. I've said it before where I wish we could see more of that mentality in sports, where you live and die with the wins and losses of your team. You know, one night, get that guy out of there. He's the worst player on the team. You know, sucks. You should just retire. You know, all that. And then the night after, maybe he has a great game. Oh, man, he's the best player. You know, keep him. Put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know? And sports fans are like that. And comic fans were like that for the longest time, and some still are. But that kind of attitude is it's what makes this stuff fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like that apathy, like, I'll tell you, that is that cold death is the worst feeling in the world. And I'm sure we've all experienced it as creators, where we pour our heart and soul into something and put it out there, and it might as well have been a mouse fart, you know, like nobody, you know, like there's nobody wants to say anything because it sucks, but they don't want to tell you it sucks. So they just, that is very interesting, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, it gets dicey when you become a creator, because then it's like, you know, and then if someone gets petty with it, they'll chuck a criticism back at you, whether it's deserved or not.
Oh God, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've got drama.
Oh God, yeah. The big D, yeah.
Man, oh man. So as far as this stuff goes, a big part of it, obviously that's a lot of fun, is the escapism, the escapist element. And I've had this conversation with people over the years that seem to think escapism revolves around something that is relatively stupid, and that's why you can escape into it. But I argue against that wholeheartedly and completely. The best escapist stuff, if anything, it helps you to actually deal with life. As much as it helps you to kind of be distracted by certain things in life, it also helps you to deal with it. It has to be engrossing and intelligent and creatively everything in the right place to trigger all those things in you that make you go, oh man, I want to be in that world.
Yeah.
When it comes to that within Infinitale Chronicles, what kind of escapist elements, what kind of like immersive subject matter is there?
Well, I drew from a lot of inspirations. Like I said, this was before the age of Google. I really loved the whole concept of Plato's allegory of the cave. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's the story of the escaped slave who, for their entire lives, these slaves were trapped in a cave, and their entire world perception were these shadows on the wall, and that's how they saw everything and believed everything. And one day, one of the slaves escapes, goes up to the surface, and sees what the world truly is. And when he returns to explain to the others, they don't believe him. And if you've ever seen or read Logan's Run, for example, that is a brilliant kind of Plato's allegory of the cave, where you have this isolated utopia that turns out to not really be a utopia.
It's like even Shyamalan's The Village.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, the minus the Bryce Dallas Howard stuff, but yeah, like it just I loved being able to take elements of stories and concepts from things that weren't expressly like epic fantasy genre. Like when you infuse a story that can transcend media or can transcend a genre, you know, like if you put Infinitale into a science fiction universe and you replaced, you know, the fantasy races with aliens or something, it would work just as well. And what I found really, really kind of cool was this was written, the story in the first book was written back in the early 90s by a bunch of teenagers. And what I found really interesting was one of the reviewers of the book said, wow, I'm seeing a lot of modern parallels with the way that these gods are basically our oppressive government, and it's about dangerous freedom of like libertarianism versus a comfortable authoritarianism. And I'm like, okay.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. When you put certain things out there, that's the whole point of art. You put it out there, it gets interpreted through different viewpoints because of different lenses and experiences and perspectives. You know, so something that maybe you went in there not even thinking that that was a thing that anyone would ever see. You didn't go in there with that mindset, and then someone took that, and then that's what that means to them.
Yeah, and I'm happy that people are pulling out their own levels of perception, their own life biases from the story. It means that they can identify with the world or identify with the characters, and they have that subconscious kind of hook that's connecting them to it. And I find that that's a really cool kind of I don't want to say a canary in the coal mine as far as like whether or not it's successful or not, but I guess a more positive thing would be it's like that barometer saying, hey, people actually can it hooks with them. It clicks. It's not like they're a completely foreign thing where they're like, okay, maybe book 2 will make more sense.
Yeah. That's something too. Is that it's important, I think, with any work like this, any kind of story, to have knowledge at least of what you're trying to get across thematically. It's supposed to anyway have a point. It's supposed to make you feel something. You're supposed to be like, okay, those people seem like they're good, those people seem like they're bad, there's a conflict here, there's something going on, that kind of stuff is so surface level and should be picked up immediately. And the desire to subvert that and play it where it's constantly morally ambiguous and you can't really make heads or tails of what's what and why anyone wants to do anything and what their motivations are, and then like thinking like, aren't I so clever for that? It's like, no, you're pretentious and boring.
How dare you, sir? Puts down his venti latte.
That's the thing, though, that's so great about wanting to create a story that you can have it epic, grandiose, this huge scale, but wanting to still tell a story that is understandable and it resonates with people. And it isn't just constantly trying to out-clever them. You're trying to entertain them and maybe even bring some sense of value across thematically with what you're trying to put out in the story.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the whole concept of, easy to pick up and play, but difficult to master. Where when you're presenting a story, if your user or if your audience has to basically invest a lot of labor to even understand it, like the auteur, you've got the black and white shots and the Dutch angles, like all this stuff, like you're not going to net as many audience or as many viewers because they don't want to work to understand your product. Like you have to have an immediate hook, and then all of that other stuff, that's cool and all, but if you don't have a coherent core story, then it's difficult for audiences to latch onto it. Like give me that one
Absolutely.
sentence, like, what's your story? Like, yeah.
And especially with characters too. If there's characters there that they don't want to spend a minute with, let alone however long that story will be, that's difficult. You're always going to have one or two characters maybe you throw in there that are purposefully supposed to, the audience is going to be like, oh, I hate this guy.
Jar Jar.
Like, and maybe you want them to kind of root for them to die, that character. Maybe that's part of it. But sometimes it's not part of it. And maybe you unintentionally create a character that you're like, I think they'd love this guy.
The Room.
Then everyone's like, oh, man. Oh, boy. Shrek says, so you're saying greater meaning in literature is often unintentional? No, I don't think... Okay, so I don't think there's greater meaning when people take something that is epic and grandiose and things like that and then reduce it to the specificity of saying that it is pinpoint an allegor for this, that, and the other thing. I think that's actually taking lesser meaning out of the greater subject matter. Taking greater meaning out of it would be to take the story and then realize that universally, and this comes, I think, with perspective and age, it's not just about this, that, and the other thing. Maybe that you can see it play out in current day politics or whatever it may be, or social issues or anything like that. But it's crosses and spans human existence in terms of, like, you look at that, and you have to be aware, I think, of history and how culturally a lot of different things have gone down within civilizations. And that, again, that's depending on your leanings and your knowledge, it's only going to take you so far. But you eventually realize this kind of stuff has been happening for forever. There's always been some kind of oppressive system of power. People who like power want to retain that power, and they'll often do various things to do that, to get to achieve that goal. And then that's the larger kind of story that plays out. But when people kind of take something like Infinitale Chronicles, let's say, and you were talking about the person who was talking about like government and libertarianism and this and that, like that's them seeing it through their lens and their perspective at that point in time, and then putting it down into a more specific sort of thing that I'm guessing was unintentional for you when you had created it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the major subtext after reviewing it from a teenage perspective was that question of, would you rather have dangerous freedom or be safely in a prison, essentially. And every teenager who is becoming a young adult has to leave the nest, and they kind of ask that question is subconsciously asked to them every time they try to become an adult. They try to free themselves from their parents, because if you don't grow, then you will die. It's like business. If you don't, there's no growth. Stagnation equals death. And that's kind of what the Infinitale, or at least the War of the Trees saga was about, is you have this beautiful utopia where it's a bunch of pretty people with problems. They never get old. They never get sick. They almost never reproduce. So there's all inconsequential sex, all that stuff. And all of a sudden, they're told, well, this is all yours. All you have to do is just obey these rules. And one day something happens where the rules change, and our hero here, or Aisling here, gets pregnant and gives birth to this kid. And suddenly they're like, yeah, well, one of our rules is we have basically human sacrifice, because nobody ever ages. We have this lottery or this, carousel, this harvest, whatever, where, a name or a couple of names are drawn every, who knows what the duration of time is. When you're eternally young, you don't really have the same concept of time. But, every so often this moon cycle, we ask that one of the, a couple of these people get sacrificed. And unfortunately, what happens is this mother gives birth to this kid, and before the kid even got a chance to be alive, his name gets drawn from the lottery. And she's like, oh, hell no. Like, that's not happening. I'm not going to sacrifice my baby to this. And they're like, it hasn't even had a chance. And they're like, yeah, but that's the rules. Like, you can't question that. Like, what do you mean? Like, people start malfunctioning. Like that's not how this works. Like, and that's where the kind of the conflict starts, is you've got this idea of this perfectly oiled machine where everything is utopian, and then all of a sudden one little wrench in the works and the whole thing falls apart. So yeah. There's 100 different ways you can interpret that if you wanted to just go outside the story. So yeah, but I could totally see, and I think that's kind of the hallmark of stuff that you can always revisit at different points within your life. There's books, there's movies, there's even songs where they hit you differently at different points of life, and you don't get certain things, and then you're at a certain age or whatever, you go through something and you go back to it and you're like, oh wow, that hits different, and it'll do that. So I really think like you've got sort of like this coming of age allegory that's going on, but you also have like a commentary on society. You also have a commentary on just kind of following the paradigm of the various rules established within society, and how sometimes it just feels like
who the hell made these rules?
Yeah.
And why are we following any of them? Oh, we follow them because we've always followed them.
Dogma.
Yeah. So you get that kind of thing, even though it kind of contradicts a lot of what maybe you would say that this and that and the other thing would make for a better civilization or a better society. But yet you follow a rule that is in direct defiance to that kind of a thing. So there's a lot of interesting subtext that you've got going on there. But I think that's that's the hallmark, I think, of some really great storytelling in general. And that's the stuff you could disappear into. That's the stuff that I like. That's the stuff that I enjoy in terms of going for something. And going back to Shrek's point too, I think that that there's a lot of literature that's created intentionally in an allegorical way. But sometimes what I think is really funny is you'll get that kind of thing occurring, and then people don't really get the allegory sometime. It's like you're so involved and invested in the characters and in the situation that they're going through that you're like, oh wait, they were. And it happens to me a lot with songs anyway, because music can be so personal, it hits you so hard and so fast, that you're like, so when they made that, that's what they were thinking about.
You mean like Sting and the Police? Remember every breath you take? Like that was at like everybody's wedding. It's like
everyone's like, that's a love song. It's a stalker. Yeah. So there's so many, and it's funny. That's part of art. That's part of what makes it art, in terms of that openness to be interpreted by people and their experiences. I hope it never goes away. I hope we never have uniformity of art, of like you're supposed to feel and think this specific thing, like only that sort of thing, tunnel vision, and nothing else. Yeah. And if you go outside and you stray from that, I mean, man, that sounds like some 1984 stuff right there.
Ingsoc, baby.
And I don't think he was trying to comment on anything. I think he was just making a lovely story.
Yeah. Yes, of course he was. Yes.
People are reading in way too deep into that. No commentary there. Even Animal Farm, it's just a bunch of animals talking. That's how it would go down.
God, when they showed that movie in school, like that and Watership Down or whatever were like traumatizing. Like, why did they show that to kids?
Man, why don't they show that to kids anymore? That's the other question. Yeah. That's the better question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, it is some of that useful trauma. I mean,
yeah.
Kids really do need to understand the lessons that Animal Farm taught, and we've seen 2 generations of that not understanding what those lessons are now.
Yeah, right. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Then 4 legs good, 2 legs better.
Yeah. Some was it all animals are equal? Some
more equal than others.
Yeah, and it's like, what?
It's like, wow, okay, but it's all of that in stories that are like that. Obviously, they're allegorical, and there's a purpose to them. It's almost like they're trying to give you the spoonful of sugar in the poison pill.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's interesting the way that storytelling has that power effect. Brian says, did you know you can get Chris's book on Amazon, Infinitale Chronicles, The War of the Trees, Book 1, Second Genesis? There you go. And speaking of Amazon, I've got 2 questions here highlighted from the chat, so I want to mention them. We got Spicer McLeroy saying, how was your experience working with Amazon? Would you recommend it? Pros and cons? I picked up a copy of Infinitale, by the way. Looking forward to reading it.
Awesome. Yeah, so my experience with Amazon, I wouldn't say it's been all positive. I wouldn't say it's been negative, but the profit margins are extremely narrow on their Kindle Direct Publishing, their print-on-demand system. I had to jump through a lot of hoops. Just like, you can't just send them a PDF. You actually have to go through their proprietary Kindle Direct Publishing application. And like, because the way they have it set up is so that it can also be read on Kindle readers. And it has all these like weird bells and whistles where you can zoom in on frames and do all these other things. So that was interesting. But it's as far as pros, obviously the reason why I went that route was because when I was in demand on Indiegogo, and all the weird shipping shenanigans started, where shipping prices started going up, down, up in every which way, and it started costing me money to send people books, and I was like, this isn't gonna fly if I have to maintain an inventory at my house, and then every time somebody orders a book, I literally have to go to the post office and drop it off myself. I would rather have it on a print-on-demand system from some, third-party proprietor. And the good thing about Amazon is they actually issue a free ISBN, so that's like a $200 value right there. You basically they'll give you an ISBN for your book, and they, it's all print-on-demand, so you don't have to maintain inventory or anything. But a big caveat to that is it is a multiple dials that you're turning, quality versus profit. So the higher the quality of your book, the less profit you make, because you're not going to jack your prices up to compensate for the cost of printing to a point where nobody's going to buy your book. Like, we're not looking at crowdfunding prices for a Amazon book. A $40 54-page comic book isn't going to fly to anybody. So you have to keep your costs down, but you also have to maintain or make sure your quality is at an acceptable level where you're like, I feel okay asking money from people for this book. So that's what I did with that, but it left me with a narrow margin. And then finally, the last kind of negative is, depending on where this goes through in your distribution centers, you could get the book delivered in pristine condition, like the way that I've had it received, or you could get it the way that some of my friends have had it received, where it looked like Ace Ventura delivered it. And I have no control over that, but it still reflects poorly on me. So
yeah, no, I hear you. That's something too where people have asked a lot about Amazon and getting into distributing comics and whatnot. And I mean, I don't think that would fly. I don't think that would be. Yeah, there'd be a lot of returns. I don't see them like bagging and boarding and then putting them in there and then putting the care into it and the Gemini mail. That thing's going in like just a whatever Amazon bubble mailer and just see ya, But yeah. So it's something with that too is that with print on demand, and this goes for not just Amazon but anyone that's using print on demand, you're not really going to benefit from economies of scale. Mm-hmm. So that is another reason too why profit margin already, even when you can benefit from economies of scale, it's already thin as hell. But yeah, that's always going to eat into it as well. But other than that, it's been pretty good for you working with them and getting things going.
Yeah. Well, I've made a decent number of sales, and it's always cool getting that email like, hey, somebody bought your book. Hey, somebody bought your book. And I'll tell you, that's a definite ego boost when you're like, did I make the wrong decision? Like, does nobody want this now that it's not in? Because like when I did the crowdfunding campaign, I threw in a lot of extra bells and whistles. I threw in a nice little shrink wrapped, like, special custom box to make it look like a big book. There were acrylic standees, the cards, the mini prints, all sorts of cool stuff. And none of those bells and whistles are in the Amazon version. So it's like, okay, so that means this thing has to survive strictly on the merit of the product rather than all the cool, like, tchotchkes.
Yeah. That's and that is a big difference between the crowdfunding aspect and then even selling a product later on and then going third party. It's like it gets further and further distilled down. So that's a good takeaway. Spicer says no margins and no quality control. No, thank you. Says thanks for the honest feedback, brother. Chris. There you go. So we got another question here from Dr. Mask. Says, is there anything out there for writers to test their stuff? For example, in board game design, there are places you can submit your game and people will test it and tell you if it sucks. I don't know of anything. I would just say, as brutal as it is, social media.
Yeah.
And then just, put on an ironclad skin on you.
Your slings and arrows.
All right, go for it.
Well, there might be some like writers groups out there, especially on like or Meta or Facebook or whatever. But yeah, definitely don't ever ask your friends and family to be your feedback circle at all. Like that is like the big red siren, because I mean, unless you got like a narcissist dad like mine who would be like, well, at least you tried, son. um, you're gonna get the the feelings over facts, and that's not gonna help you at all. So the social media might be your best bet. Just go out there with the full understanding that there are going to be slings and arrows.
Yeah, and I mean, you're gonna get that regardless when you get it out there and people become customers, and they'll become really vocal about it, and there's nothing you can do at that point, but maybe you can do something on the next one, and then hopefully they'll come back for it. But my best advice I can give you on something like that would be, and I know it's difficult, and it's difficult for both people, difficult to ask of this, and then difficult for the person to do it. But there's a lot of people you'll see out there that are editors, and they'll say so. You have to be careful sometimes that they're not really an editor. They're a proofreader maybe, and even that sometimes I'm like, I don't know. But if you know the work, you trust the work, you trust the creator, the person that's there, the editor, and you let them know. Please just be very honest with me. Don't mince words. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to stop buying your stuff. You really have to let people know, especially when they're in a position that they're selling something to. Like if someone approaches me and is like, can you read my thing and then just give me some feedback? Oftentimes when it's presented like that, I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to. Because even I've given like very light feedback over the years to people who've submitted to Alterna. Not even people who are just, hey, I made something, check it out. They've submitted to have me as their publisher, and giving them very just light feedback of things they need to, and they would go ballistic.
Oof.
So, and then there's been some people that obviously have been very professional about it, and will even sometimes revise the submission and actually take the notes and be professional about it. But a lot of people, as soon as they want like a pat on the back, they don't want feedback. So you have to really express that you want that honesty. You want that brutal critique that's going to make them better. And please let them know to give that to you, as opposed to being like, well, what do you think about it? Because most people, when they go, hey, I made something, what do you think about it? They really kind of just want you to say, oh, it's great. And then there's some kind of conversation that can start from there. But if you truly want helpful critique, if you truly want that kind of feedback that could make you better, let people know, because it is a difficult thing for people to, when they're in a position where they go, I don't know, I don't want to lose a customer. I don't want someone to then take this and then go, look at what this jerk said about my project. And in the day and age of social media, everyone's ready to turn it into a Me Too case. And it's like, that's not the case with everything. Everything doesn't have to be that someone was trying to be just mean to you and knock you down, especially if you're coming at them with, okay, give me some honest feedback. Give me some pointers here. Let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. And then what'll really help, if you approach a professional especially, let them know you're willing to pay them for their time. Because that's really going to help too. And be like, hey, be a consult on this for me. Or if it's an editor, even offer to hire them on as an editor. But that, I think, is after you take some kind of initiative to share it, get it out there, get your skin thickened. But that's a part that a lot of people ignore. One other question from Spicer McLeroy says, have you found any correlation between UX and comic book production?
Yeah, a lot of it would definitely revolve around that feedback. And you definitely, when you're dealing in user experience, like, you are detached from your product. When you're receiving criticism, It's not just on behalf of your work; it's also on behalf of your engineers and your product managers and everybody else that's involved. So it's you're basically the face man or the vanguard of feedback for a team, and that really helps you kind of disassociate yourself from that feedback. When people are saying this is terrible, blah 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 blah, they're not saying you're terrible. And a lot of like, what you were saying, Pete, about like, people are asking for feedback and what they're really asking for is just praise or, a pat on the back. Like that whole mentality disappears if you find yourself in a position where the survival of your product depends entirely on the feedback of your customers. And when you adopt that mentality of, okay, I need to listen to what these people are saying and I need to translate what that is. And my ego needs to be like in another zip code. Like I can't let ego get in the way of my product or in, the success of what, because ultimately you're not making this for you. And I think that's what UX really teaches you, is that you're making a product or you're designing a product for other people. And part of the process of making that product for other people is hearing their feedback and having them tell you what, having a conversation and a relationship with your customer. And I think like in the indie sphere, a lot of us don't really have that. Like a lot of us don't have that understanding because we're like, we just want to make cool books, but there's a lot more than just making cool books, because cool is subjective. It's getting that ability to disassociate yourself from your work, hear actual feedback, have a conversation and a relationship with your customers, and give them a product they want. So sorry, I don't know, that's kind of long-winded.
But... No, that's perfect. Give them more of what they love, less of what they don't, and still tell the story you want to tell.
Oh yeah.
If anything, a lot of people say that, oh, well, that's fan service, that's pandering, that's this, that's that. No, that's oh, and hey, Hojo, what's up? How's it going? Hey. That's the mentality that you have to have, though, when you're putting something out there that other people are expected to not just give their money to, but their time. So if you're just doing it for yourself, if this is just like a fun story for yourself, okay, do whatever you want. But as soon as you're putting it out there and you're expecting as many people as possible to be into this, now everyone's going to have a different opinion, of course. But once you're doing that and you're getting out there, you have to at least be open to the understanding that people are then going to have opinions on things. Now, when you see certain things going along the way and people have their opinion and express opinions to you, some might be actually giving you objective opinion based on the execution of the product. That's different. Some may give you opinion based on and feedback based on how you're making and creating the story, the characters, whatever your creative choices were along the way. That's fine. But now when all of a sudden you start seeing people, that the conversation is geared more and more towards talking about the things they liked, the things they didn't like, the things that they, they start asking questions about the story, about the characters. They start expressing confusion on certain elements. You have to understand, and this is all, it takes time to get there. Eventually it becomes second nature in terms of interpreting this. But when you're new to it, everything feels like an attack. So I get the mindset of some people when they're new to it. It's all like, oh my God, they're attacking me on all this stuff. But when the majority of it is just questions and then just people being kind of confused as to, well, why did you do that instead of this? Why did you do it like that instead of like this? And the frame of reference that they have is obviously something that they're saying, because this is better when they did that thing like this, and you did something similar, but you did it to a lesser degree. The execution isn't as spot on. And that is then something to look at and go, yeah, you know what? How did they do that? That does work. Or maybe you go, you know what? That doesn't work. That's a whole different thing. It's a whole different kind of way of telling a story, a whole different character, a whole different whatever. And that's not something I want to do. So there's no reason to be confrontational about it, but there you have to know, you have to understand, and it takes time to develop the attitude, and it takes time to develop the perspective. But man, it is so vital. It is so vital, and it's important because of the fact that like you're talking about. This is the survival of your product, perhaps even the survival of yourself. So if you're sitting there and you're just like, no, I'm gonna do everything I want to do, and everyone else is like, yeah, but we don't really like that, then you gotta go, okay, well, I gotta make something people like, and they're gonna be interested in, and they're gonna buy, or the other consequence of doing that, of making something that's just for you.
Well, that and like, would you rather be right and make no sales, or be wrong and or do the wrong thing and make sales? There's always compromise.
Yeah,
like,
and there's always a
your
happy
ego.
middle ground when you're striving to make the best possible thing you can make, and you're striving to learn how to maybe up your game, outdo yourself, whatever it may be, and you're competing constantly with yourself to get better and better. There's always a positive to that, and when you're going in there and you're making your story the way you want to make it, you're making the characters you want to make, you're doing the things you want to do. There's always an upside to that. But the thing is that when that's not working out, and that's the conversation sometimes that some people don't want to have. Sometimes it does work out, and maybe you just don't like that. That's just not for you. That's fine. But when it's not working out and it doesn't seem to be for anybody but you, that's when the conversation has to be had, and you got to really do a self-assessment. So there's all kinds of like little. Sometimes it seems like splitting of hairs, I think, when it comes to talking about this subject. But that's all this stuff really is. It is splitting hairs, because it is like, you just go. It's a game of inches. You go a little bit to the left, and all of a sudden, oh my God, that's the worst thing. Little bit to the right, oh, that's the worst. But you go right down the middle. Oh, okay, it's dead on. It's accurate. So it's always about that. But it takes time, man. It takes time. How long have you been doing this?
Well, the comics itself, I started in earnest back in 2015, 2016, around then. I reached out to Sky Zen over at High Concept Media Productions out in California. And he was kind of, when I initially was approaching the comic, I was actually, and again, this shows you how naive I was when I initially hit this, was I actually wrote it in screenplay format. I thought, I could make an animation out of this. I got Flash, I could do this. And then about 4 months into it, I realized, wow, I made 6 frames of animation out of a 24 frames per second movie. Yeah, maybe I'm not going to do this in animation. So yeah, I ran it through Zen, and he's like, okay, we got to translate this into an actual legible comic book script. Here, get this. Here's some sources, some online sources about this. Here's a website, Eric Weathers. He's got like some of the best lettering I've ever seen. Read through all of his stuff, and it was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something here. And that was where kind of version 0.1a started back in 2016. And then we started building from there, got a bunch of proofreaders, tore it to shreds, made me cry. And then we actually made a viable product. And by 2021, we brought it to market. And that was when the crowdfunding campaign kicked off.
Wow, man. Nice. So what's coming down the line? What do you have planned?
So for book 2, one of the things that I did when the crowdfunding campaign ended for book 1 is I sent out a survey and gathered all the information that I could out of that survey, feedback wise, and met with the art team and got some some pointers here and there and things we could change, whatever. So book 2 will come out from the original art team, but I also spoke with some friends over at another studio art team who said, you know what, we can do this too. We'd love to make this story. Like, it's a good viable story. We'll do it too. So I have, instead of just variant covers, I actually have a variant book. So book 2 that's coming out, we're aiming for probably the middle of this year, so quarter 2, quarter 3 maybe, to kick off the campaign. But there will be book 2, which will be from the original art team, an alternative book 2, which will be by this new art team. So same story, same everything, just 2 different books from 2 different art teams into the same world. And then I'm also making a salvaging the line art or the black and white stuff or pages from the book 1 and book 2 and making a manga edition. This will be a compilation of books 1 and 2. It'll be over 160 pages.
Is this like an A/B test? Or are you trying to determine what the reader's like?
Yes. Some of the feedback we got was regarding the art. And what I'm trying to do is to see which direction, like you were talking about, the go to the left a little, go to the right. And it's kind of that A/B testing in the sense of if book A sells more, we'll go that route. If book B sells more, we go that route. If the manga sells the most, guess what? Well, Toshi will, mangaka desu, or I don't know what the hell. I haven't spoken Japanese in 10 years. But basically, like I actually have the manga cover out, and I actually have the Jumiko no Taisen, which is the War of the Trees in Japanese. So the book reads right to left, did the whole shebang. So,
wow. Well, man, best of luck to you with that. That's an interesting path to take. I'm curious to see how it goes.
Thanks, me too.
Yeah, man. So when is that launching?
I'm hoping for sometime in June, maybe. But I am at the mercy of my art teams. So if they are, if they need more time, then I'm gonna have to push it up a little. But I do have a kind of a hard deadline. I'm hoping. Granite State Comic Con's coming up in September, and this will be my first time I go to a convention. So, yeah, a little nervous on that one. But I hope to have a product other than my first book for sale there.
All right, awesome, man. Okay, so before we go, where can they find you?
Sure, yeah. You can find me at infinitaalchronicles.com. I got a pretty cool website. Talks about the books, a whole bunch of lore, deep dives, all that stuff if you're into it. And you can watch me make a total fool of myself on X or Twitter or whatever the hell we're calling it now at Infinitel Comic.
There you go. All right, I got the link in the description for you guys. If you do want to check out the website, go for it. It's a very nice site. And I got to say, you took out a couple ads in alternate books, I think like about a year ago or so.
Oh, yeah.
And man, those came out good.
Oh,
they came out good. Those are slick.
Thanks. That's just my graphic design stuff. So
yeah, very pro, very polished, man. So yeah, go check out Infinitale Chronicles. It's currently on infinitaalchronicles.com. You guys can learn more about it there. And other than that, like I said before at the start of the show, the Alterna 18, all caps, no spaces, Alterna 18 at alternacomics.com will get you 18% off your order. That ends tomorrow on the 12th. The 12th is the last day for that sale. And then also the Behemoth Prismatic sticker is back again. We're offering this as a new moon special. We're doing the new moon and full moon specials. We're cycling through them one more time before the campaign fulfills in June, July. So get that. Make sure you go to either kingcryptid.com or alternacomics.com and pick that up. $3 and free shipping worldwide. Other than that, I'll be back. Let me see. I'm weighing whether I should be back tomorrow or Saturday. I might be back tomorrow. We'll see. If I'm back tomorrow, I'll be here at 9 o'clock Eastern. If I'm back Saturday, I'll be there at Saturday, 9 o'clock Eastern. Either way, 9 o'clock Eastern. So I'll see you guys real soon. Sunday, I should be having Sarah Frazetta on at 9 o'clock Eastern, and we'll be talking to her about all the Frazetta stuff. And that should be a fun show. But either way, I'll see you guys soon. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. All of your questions, comments, all that good stuff. And Chris, thank you so much for your time and for the conversation. It was great, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, everybody, take it easy. Have a wonderful night and an even better tomorrow. See you guys soon.